Hey everyone. So this is probably the last video I will force upon you. I really like reading all of your predictions at the end of the class um, because it's a more or less unfiltered view of what things are on your mind. What are you interested in um, as you look to the future? You can use Heider Etzioni or Sawhill, but you don't have to. But I know those things are kind of in the background of your mind because that's what we talked about all semester. So I enjoy reading them. I genuinely do. And I think it's fun to give my predictions as well. And I've got kind of a running library of these that I make every semester. And sometimes I go back to see what 6 or so months or 3 months. So it's kind of funny that all of you had a nearly identical set of America will be more technologically advanced and diverse and globally interconnected or something. Almost all of you had some sort of structure like that. And so I guess I'll give you predictions along those general lines. I'll talk about tech, such that I can. That's not my wheelhouse specifically, and the social elements, I suppose, of society domestically, and then the bigger picture, the global world. By the way, this is a temporary tattoo that's coming off. I put it on for my kids. So, technology. I'm going to be a big downer here. I'm going to give you the negative. Technology, mostly bad. So if you think about anything, right, there's like the economic curve where it's like the first couple things you get are great, and then as you get more and more, diminishing returns. I think we're hitting diminishing returns with technology. So social media. Social media is fun and addictive for a lot of people, but I don't know that it's actually good for people. And it certainly doesn't seem to be effective at driving actual social or like social capital and civic engagement. It is a good tool for political parties to use to motivate people to reach voters, but I don't think it does the job that we want it to do in terms of what Putnam was talking about. When it comes to young people, and this is actually where I'm going to focus most of my discussion, technology is not good for kids. Uh, AI is not good for kids. Tech in classrooms, we just found out recently, is probably not good for kids. And social media, we definitely know is not good for kids. So this is about what I've figured out thus far. And if the data changes, right, then I can change my perspective on this because it's not based on what I want to be true. It's based on what I think is factually defensible. Kids need to interact with the world manually, and they need to understand the world manually. They need to learn about it, experiment with it, and write, read, and handle things, and feel things, and touch things. They need to do all of those things to understand the world around them, having a good baseline. Introducing technology damages that, apparently. And that's where the tech in classrooms problem comes in. Then there's the social media problem. Social media the evidence is quite strong. Social media is bad for kids. It increases rates of loneliness, depression, anxiety, and even suicide. It's worse for girls than for boys. That has to do with how girls and boys tend to socialize on average, but it's bad. And so if you have kids, you're going to have kids, keep them away from social media for as long as you can. And yes, it will be hard because if the other kids are doing it, then they'll want to do it too. I get that. But bigger fish to fry. So tech for kids, bad in classrooms. Social media for kids, bad all around. And once you get to a certain age, you got to make decisions for yourself. But as a kid, that's why you're a kid. We make decisions for you because we don't trust you yet. Your brain's still cooking. Then there's AI, and I messed with AI quite a bit over the last couple of years, so I have a decent enough understanding of it just from a practical usage perspective. People forget AI is just a large language model. It just predicts text. It just aggregates information and it spits out what the algorithm thinks is an answer, but doesn't think is the point. So on issues that I may have said this in previous videos, on issues that I am relatively expert, whether it's through hobby or profession, AI is woefully lacking and completely unable to be useful in those realms. I've used it to experiment with grading through the university initiatives, not with you, but in a segmented thing. Didn't work. It doesn't understand It can't even get factual rules correct or specific elements of a theory correct. It analyzes it wrong. It makes stuff up. It hallucinates. So AI is going to make it very hard for all of us to know what is real forever. And the majority of the information that actually exists right now, as I understand it, is actually AI created information. Think about that for a minute. Humans have been creating knowledge for thousands of years. And right now, after AI is a handful of years old, the majority of the knowledge that exists was made by AI. That's how fast it generates information. And it's mostly not right, or it's 75% right. That's a huge problem. So I'm not happy about all that. But then AI also is very bad for kids because, again, it's outsourcing the cognitive function. Technology of the past were derided, the plow, the tractor, the typewriter, the calculator. These things all relied on humans having an understanding, a technical understanding, a theoretical understanding to be able to interact with them and use them effectively. AI is not like that. You can ask AI to just do something and it will do it, and you won't have any understanding of all what went into it. And so little kids that use this, the results thus far, because it's still pretty new in its data collection, the researchers, it decreases cognitive function, it decreases critical thinking. AI is not good for kids. Keep your kids away from AI, and just AI slop sucks, and we all know that. So technology, my approach to technology at this stage is, I think we have hit the point on the curve of diminishing returns. We've gotten all these massive benefits, and our lives have gotten so much better from technology. I mean, at a certain point, humans have a limited ability to benefit from technology when it comes to our social, emotional, and just mental faculties. Take it for what you will. I think any further interaction with AI is going to be less beneficial to us. On the social side of things, domestically speaking, I'm very interested in immigration, and I follow those kind of elements, and I'm very interested in LGBTQIA plus stuff, and I've been following that for about 10, 15 years because I saw it in its early stages, not LGB obviously, but the TQIA, and certainly about 2015 or 14, I saw these manifestations, and I thought this is all going to get legal, and it's going to go to the government, it's going to be a big deal. And I was more or less correct on that. So here's a couple things. One, we know that the United States is going to no longer be a majority white country. About 2050, that are going to drop below 50%. Now, they'll still be the biggest racial ethnic chunk, not even ethnic, but racial, because white is a whole mishmash of various European identities. And what will that mean? Hard to say. By the time we reach that point, it will have been this sort of slow process, 20, 30-year process, whatever. And I don't know that it'll be that big a deal. Some elements, radical elements may get mad, do something violent. The United States will continue to bring in new immigrants, right? White populations are not growing, shrinking, in fact. So are black populations. They're not growing either. So white and black Americans are going to become both smaller in proportion to increasing numbers of external factors. Largely South and Central American, because if you just think about it, they're just right there at the southern border. A lot of them can walk here, get here more easily. It's much harder for people in Africa, Asia, Europe, right, to get here otherwise on a boat or a plane. So okay, that's the thing. And we'll do that because of the economic necessity. We need workers because the domestic population isn't producing them. My wife and I we're in our 40s. And we have 2 small children. So we delayed having children and we had fewer of them. And I completely regret that, but my life was my life. I did what I did. So because we have our populations, and we'll get into the global in a minute, because American domestic birth rates are down, we're going to have more and more immigration because we'll need it for the economic benefits and necessity, because we need supply and we need demand, right, to keep an economy going. And where we get those immigrants from will matter, because it'll be important to what extent those immigrants can, will, or are willing to assimilate. Different cultures, different groups of people assimilate to different degrees based on the level of difference. But what's interesting to me We'll talk about the TQIA plus for a second here. I'll jump back to immigration because they'll kind of converge a little bit. So the LGB movement has been longstanding. They fought lots of battles. For anybody familiar, you go back to Stonewall. And in 2015, they had a landmark victory with the Obergefell v. Hodges case, where the Supreme Court ruled that gay marriage, that same-sex marriage, could not be made illegal. At that stage, it was effectively legal. It wasn't until 2022-ish when I think Biden or the Congress and the Senate under Biden federally recognized and protected gay marriage. So now it's not just a court ruling, it's established in law. But about 2015 or so, this TQIA plus group came into the picture more substantially and attached themselves to the political mechanism of the LGB that had previously existed. And they became very effective, very fast, and they made big, bold, fast moves into society. And there was substantial pushback. And I've always thought of them as differently because their claims are fundamentally different. And if you actually look at them and break down what the various concepts of them are, they don't really fit together very well. And so I've been interested in that. And it seems like the Democrats, because that's the party who would normally, right, be amenable to those, they're starting to distance themselves a little bit because it's not a winning message for a lot of people. Once kids were brought in to the discussion, a lot of Americans went, nope, wasn't sure. I wanted to be on the right side of history. I wanted to be, I wanted to be a good liberal. I want to be a good Democrat and be open and understanding and accepting. But a lot of people, I think, changed their tune at a certain point. So the TQI plus is a bit floundering in their movement. They're not gone, of course, and those people still exist. But politically speaking, those are some things I've been noticing. Now, back to immigration. So the immigration element is fascinating to me because, okay, the United States is the most conservative, most religious Western nation, right? Europe, Canada, United States, Australia, New Zealand, right? The Anglosphere and Western Europe. America is the most conservative, socially conservative. So everywhere else outside of that Western sphere is more socially conservative. Economically, it's a mixed bag. So if the United States is going to continue to import immigrants from various parts of the world, Asia, Africa, Central, South America, right, barring Western Europe, all those immigrants are going to be more socially conservative, which is going to have an impact on U.S. policy and U.S. social policy. So something to keep in your head. Okay, well, anyway, so then, so what does that mean? I think the United States is going to become more socially conservative in some ways. But some of those same places are also economically very left. So I can't really speak on what that's going to look like. Although Democrat Socialists of America are making some headway, and Bernie and AOC have gained a lot of traction with their, tours in the last couple of years. I don't think those are good policies, mind you, but if people don't think they have a lot of great economic opportunity and they're frustrated with the system and they're told the system is inherently evil, then I suppose, sure. On the global stage, this is kind of where I spend a lot of my time. So I grew up in a bipolar world. US, Soviet Union, eyeball to eyeball, nukes pointed at each other, everyone else waiting to die. Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. And for about 25 years, the United States was the sole superpower on the planet. Militarily, economically, it was unrivaled by several orders of magnitude. Till about 2015, 2017, when China entered its phase as a great power and a rival great power, which the United States absolutely facilitated. Different conversation. And so then we were in a multipolar world, which is to say, United States is a pole, China is a pole, but also Russia, not nearly as powerful as the other two, but powerful in its own right and can impact its region. But India, it's 1 billion people, strong nationalism. So they're going to do some stuff if they feel like it. So we've got multiple different countries now of varying power levels, which means more chaos, more unpredictability, greater power of conflict. So that's in the future for us, I'm afraid. Will the United States continue to protect the shipping lanes and maintain the global economic order from the post-war period? It's not evident that they are, and in fact, they may not, in which case the global economy will contract, which will be bad for everybody. But if you live here in the US with Canada, Mexico, and the United States, that's actually a pretty good relationship of resources and competencies and skills and economies that these three will probably weather the storm better than many others. Anyway, so potential conflict in the unbalanced multipolar world, decreased globalization because of decreased trade, but also the entire global population is collapsing. Remember, I said the United States isn't making enough new kids, Black Americans, white Americans. Hispanic is still fairly high, and immigrant populations are always high, at least at first. Some tend to drop off, but not all do. But across Europe, China, South Korea, Japan, collapsing demographic structures. They're not making new kids. China accelerated this with its one-child policy from years in the past. I think one of the worst demographic structures in the world is in South Korea, possibly in the capital city of Seoul, with 0.25 births per woman. So this is how you measure births, just real quick, right? So me and my wife, right? So we're two people. So the replacement is 2 births per woman. She has 1 kid for her and 1 kid for me, and then we have replaced ourselves. Okay, and so that's replacement population. In Korea, it's 1/4 child per woman. So they are, which is sad. I don't want to see any society go away. And I think, for example, I'm a huge fan of Japan. I think Japan's real cool. I don't know how much longer they're going to be around, sadly. And they've kind of managed that because they see it coming. And here's another interesting thing, right? So Western societies are having huge problems with immigration right now. Europe, much more so than the United States. And there's no way out of it because either they take the immigrants that don't get along well, and there's violence in the streets and increased, rates of not domestic violence, but rape and sexual assaults and all the terrible things that they're dealing with. And then they get a functional economy because they're still buying and selling of stuff, or they cut off immigration and they accept and manage their decline, which they have, I guess, chosen not to do. So the conflict that's happening in Europe is going to increase, I'm afraid. And China, Korea, Japan, they have taken a very different path, which is another entirely separate, fascinating conversation. They don't want immigrants. They don't particularly like immigrants because, well, by our standards, we just say they're racist, which is, more or less true, xenophobic, racist, whatever. They want their culture to be their way, and they don't want new people coming in and doing it differently, so they're just not welcome. China tried it, or Japan tried it rather, and they're just like, no, we hate this. We'd rather fade away than change our culture. And so that's the decision they made. And so those things are all at play on the global stage, and doesn't even take into account Iran and the Strait of Hormuz and the flow or lack of flow of resources out of there to East Asia, and whether or not China will get involved because they are deeply, deeply reliant, heavily reliant on external sources of energy. They don't produce their own, not really. The wind farms, the solar farms, I think that's, even if it's real, it's just not sufficient to do what they need. They still need a base load, which is fossil fuel, unless they're going to start building nuclear power plants. And those take like 10 years to put up. I mean, if you're super motivated, maybe 8, I don't know, that's kind of outside my wheelhouse. The world's going to be a crazier, scarier place in the coming years, not more stable and not more integrated. I hope you all are correct. I hope your optimism wins out, and I hope that my pessimism is mistaken. A lot of things could happen to change those outcomes. When it comes to technology, I'm sticking to my guns on that one. It's been fun, everyone. Good luck.